Welcome back to the Bernard Lee Poker Show. We are talking with four WPT main event champion, Darren Elias, as he now is entering the 2022 Hard Rock Showdown final table. The final six players as the chip leader trying to take down his now record extending fifth WPT main event. We talked a little bit about the early part of his career in the first part of our interview, but now really kind of want to talk a little bit more about the event and also a couple other things as well, maybe some strategy. But one thing I want to talk about before we get into the specific event is the WPT has something that so many people want in every event, especially the WSOP. We're talking about the shot clock. And the shot clock is a specific where every time, you know what? I'm not even going to explain it because I've lived through it once, but you've lived through it many times. Why don't you talk about it and you tell them about the advantages and the disadvantages, et cetera.
Sure. Yeah, the World Poker Tour, the way they do it is they introduce the action clock, they call it, basically around the bubble. So that it's usually end of day 2, beginning of day 3. So you don't have it on the first day. Right. And usually play is faster on day 1 of these things than on the bubble or deep. So I think that is good that also in a 2,000 player field to get 200 clocks or something is a big endeavor. So it comes in around the bubble and you get 30 seconds to act baseline. And then you have these little time bank chips, which are essentially timeouts. And I think it depends on the field size, but usually get like 8. And if you need an extra 30 seconds, you throw one in at any time. And the dealer hits a button and you get another 30 seconds. If you ever have no time banks and you run out of time, your hand is dead, you lose, and you basically have 30 seconds for the rest of the tournament on every decision, which can be tough if you ever get in a spot where you need to use all your time banks, or you're kind of weighing, is it worth it to use my last time bank? Like there is some different thinking that gets involved. But I think it's great to speed up pace of play, and it does a lot to avoid stalling near the bubble or for pay jumps, which is something pros don't like, recs don't like. Nobody likes having their time wasted at the poker table.
Right. And so the dealer themselves, they don't literally hit it every single person, right? So literally
there's an big iPad countdown, and each time fold, they hit the button.
Oh, really? I thought it was more of like, I guess I wasn't really paying attention, and maybe it was different. You know, I haven't played on one in several years, but like I thought it was fold, he's thinking, and then they hit it kind of thing. Like,
it depends at what stage you're on the tournament, how fast somebody folds, but the dealers are pretty well trained, and at this point it's a smooth system.
Yeah, and I think that the iPad is new too, because it used to be just like a box that was right next to it. So I'm sure it's improved since then. So, and then, for people who have not played with this shot clock, basically it's as if, when you're at the World Series, someone goes, time, I need a clock. Literally, they give you 30 seconds. It's as if you get called on it the second the hand comes to you. That's really what it is. And it really, what's interesting is you have to think about it. Yes, if you need time, obviously take time. But then there's weird strategies too. Like people take the time when they have the stone cold nuts, because they're really making you try to think like, I'm really thinking about this and all that stuff. I know Grinder talked about that when it first came out. He said like, and I threw 2 time banks out, making him think I had nothing. This is when it first started. So that was very innovative right then, and he's like, and I got him to like shove all in on me. And I was like, I had the nuts, it's simple. So I'm sure there's a lot of little intricacies that come with that. And like you said, you don't want to use them all, because then that's kind of like a waste. It's kind of like in sports where you have to keep that last timeout to be able to challenge, right? If you don't have any timeouts, you can't challenge the call on instant replay. But so is it every day you get a fresh set, or do you keep the one? Do they carry over? How does it work?
They kind of reset periodically throughout the tournament. So on the World Poker Tour, around the bubble, you get 8, I think. And then you have 8 all the way down to 24 players. So we go 8-handed. And it's when you get down to 3 tables, you reset to 6. And then we played from 24 down to 6 players. You only have 6. So kind of when we were 7-handed, 3 of the guys didn't have any. So that's kind of sick that we're playing $1 million final table. We're on the TV bubble. These guys are mostly, I don't want to say they're recreational players, but they're not used to playing for big money with a shot clock.
Right.
So they're in kind of a tense situation with 30 seconds to act. It's high pressure. I think it's a lot of fun.
And does the dealer literally, like, at one point will they say like you've got 10, 9?
Yeah, 10 and
10,
5.
right?
They'll go 10 seconds and then 5 and your hand is dead if you have no time banks.
Crazy. I mean, and they've got to make these, like you said, some of them, I'm sure the cash that they're at right now could be their career high / tournament career earnings.
Absolutely.
In total, right? I mean,
good news is it does reset for the TV final table. Everyone receives, we'll all have 6, so you get kind of a reset. But it is interesting as you get deeper and you get down to heads up 3-handed, usually you only have a couple left.
Right. Let's talk about the tournament itself. 2010 players. We already talked previously how incredible that is. Florida, one of the biggest hotbeds for people who don't know this. Everyone thinks Las Vegas, that's where all the tournaments are. And during the World Series, of course. I mean, that's really where the center of the poker universe is. But right now, Florida is hot as anything. It definitely opened up the first 4 after, well, kind of during, let's be honest, it wasn't after, and we're not still even in after, but like during COVID, they were the first states to put up the partitions, and then even some of the places didn't have the partitions, had the masks, and a lot of people went there to play. So it boomed, and it's just kind of continued. And so Florida, Seminole Hard Rock, give Tony Burns and all of those guys unbelievable props for doing what they did, because they've done such a great job. What was it like? How is the play down in Florida? Aggressive? Is it, because a lot of wrecks, not as GTO? Like, what do you see? And I'm sure it's a mixture, but what do you see?
Yeah, I was down there right during COVID. I had the mask and partitions. I actually got 10th in basically the same tournament last year in January. So I've been down there playing a lot, and the action is pretty wild, I would say. You get a mix of pros. There are pros, a lot of Florida pros, and then guys like me travel down there to play the bigger events. And then you get a mix of locals who seem to be fairly flush with money. And you see a lot of all-ins, a lot of re-entries. It's not like people are like grinding one entry in these things.
Right.
They're firing multiple entries.
They take chances. Like I've played down there a few times. It is amazing to me what some of these guys are shoving in, calling, etc. And you're just like, what? Like it doesn't make, it's honestly different from what we have up here in the East Coast and the West Coast. I mean, it's really a different animal. It's like, to me, like you said, they're very flush with money and they really don't care. And a lot of them are trying to, I wouldn't even say they're trying to tell a story. They're just trying to like, well, I just want to get chips kind of thing. And I don't care if it's a 4 or 3 outer, I'm going for it. And you just kind of rub your eyes like, am I really seeing what I think I'm seeing? And it is not uncommon that after the second or third, like going into the first break, somebody having triple the starting stack. It's not uncommon at all, right?
I've seen it. And these guys, though, if they get knocked out in one of these scenarios, they'll go to the cage and buy another ticket and get more chips that way. And I know some players complain about unlimited reentry, that kind of thing. But if players want to play this way, it's their money. They can do whatever they want. I'm fine with it. And that's kind of what creates these huge prize pools where we get 2,000 entries. Right. And I'm sure they weren't all unique, obviously. A lot of these are guys in for 4, 5, 6 bullets, stuff like that. So I think it's great action down there. And right now, one of my favorite spots to play.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, I will say that the first 4 days, the first tournament I went down there, I was there, supposed to be there for 8 days. And after the 5th day, I'm being very honest, I left. Like I just like my brain was just like, this is, I got to think about this. I really got to think about it because now I'm, it's kind of like you're going to start playing the way they're going to start playing and you can't do that. And it was like, and also when you have a bad string at the table, it like compounds all this, right? Like you go in as a 94% favorite and then they like, they hit it. And you're like, what is going on? It happens 3 times in a row when you feel like they're playing so badly. All you have to do is play smart. You know what I mean? Like, and then
it's for big money too. Like a good barometer of the money and stuff is look at this high roller event. They have a 25K high roller they ran last week, 140 entries.
Isn't it unbelievable?
That's like 10
I literally was like,
numbers.
this is exactly. I go, this can't be right. I mean, I thought it was like 40 something, 100. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm sure this isn't just the pro circuit. This is, probably a third, if not half of those entries were people that you don't even know who they are.
Yep, that's valued 25K of the year. Hurt to miss it, but I guess it could be worth it for me.
Right. I mean, unbelievable to see this. So obviously Florida's that we've just described Florida for people who haven't been down in Florida. Again, that's not a negative. What we've just talked about is not negative by any stretch at all.
No.
If anything, it's possibly positive
Yeah.
because of how they're playing. And if you play it and adjust the right way, it's good. I mean, I've gone down since and I adjusted and I had a really good run. So like, I get it, it's fine, but it definitely is a different world if you've never faced it. So when you go down there, you're playing. How did the first couple of days, like leading up to the bubble, how was it? Was it a grind or was it
Day 1A, I didn't have a very good start. Couldn't get it going. Busted my first entry, re-entered, ran a big bluff, got snapped off by second pair or something, said I'm done bluffing in Florida, re-entered the third one. Then I think I bagged like 4 or 5 starting stacks and pretty good day 2. I bagged maybe 500K or something, and then got a really good start on day 3 where I like 10x my stack the first level. So I went from 500K to 5 million on day 3, and from there it was pretty smooth sailing.
I think there's a lot of talk about bubble play, right? Everyone talks about bubble play, and you and I actually had this conversation offline about bubble play, of how you really can take advantage of it when you see the moment. And I would say, I will take a step back also, is that I think there's so much talk about bubble play that people do it at the wrong time too. They're trying to do it and force the issue, and then they end up having like a 60 big blind stack and they lose it all the way down to 15 because they're just blowing up for no reason.
Yeah.
But I think one stage of the tournament that a lot of people don't talk about is pre-final table. And I'm talking, you talked about 24 players down, and that's really where it is. And I would almost honestly say really like 18 down, like the final 2 tables, because, and so I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, because if people go to the WPT live updates for this tournament, you can go on WPT.com and see them. I always do this whenever I interview. Obviously, I do pre-interview and I look up the information. I look up the stuff and I look down. I started at where it ended and looked all the way down and looked at all the hands and all the live updates. And I was looking for the hand that got you to the chip lead. Like, what was the big hand that got you chip leading? Because just so put in perspective, Darren's got almost 39 million. One person has 26.5 million. And then the other 3 players combined don't have as much as Darren has. So like it's 11, 10, 6, and 5, right? And we're going to 150,000, 300,000. So one person's got like 18 bigs, right? So just to put in perspective, it's not like, Darren snuck in. He's got a big chip lead. So I'm trying to find, where is it? Like, oh, did you have set over set, or did you, whatever? There's nothing. There's no hand that Darren doubled up in when we were down to like 18 players. It was just all incremental grinding up and up and up and up. And I really think that is so relevant to the world that we live in, because I think everyone thinks, oh, you got to get lucky. I understand you got to get lucky at times, but sometimes it's grinding and sometimes it's picking those spots at the right time, because, and I'd like for you to describe it as well, is that there are, at that moment, when you get down to the final 2 tables, everyone is doing this. I don't care who it is, everyone, because everyone is like, I am this close to making a WPT final table. Yep. And now understand, WPT final table is still 6, but we talked about before, some people literally 7, 8, and they have an average stack. Lock it up, baby. I'm going to be on TV. Like, I don't care what you say, I'm going to be on TV. But I really think that 18 to 10, and really that 14 to 9, that's where you can just build up chips, because people are just mailing it in. They're folding king, queen. They're not even thinking about it. 6s, 7s, they're just punching them in like this. Talk a little bit about how you kind of assess that stage. Obviously, you've played with these guys for a while and you know it, but who are the guys that you are more than happy to at least call their raise, maybe 3-bet them? What are those types of players? And I'm sure when you describe it, there are going to be some listeners and people who are watching here on YouTube that are going to say, oh my God, that's me. That's what I do, and so it's just really kind of open up people's eyes.
Yeah. People go both ways. There's guys that are going to be very tight in those spots. They're going to be looking at the pay jumps. They're going to be trying to make the final table. And then you're also going to get some guys who just are there to win. They got big stacks. They want to play big pots. You got those guys as well. But with what you're saying, I would agree that especially when you get down to 2 tables and you're at 6-handed or 5-handed, so that's like 12 players to 9, people don't really adapt enough and realize that you're playing 5-6-handed at huge stakes. Every pot is meaningful. Blinds are 100K, 200K. You're getting blinded out pretty quickly if you're just in there folding. And a lot of times I would say the tournament is won, or at least you're put in position to win at these final 2 tables, especially if you have kind of a long drawn out where two tables are 5-handed or 6-handed. I mean, you can be at 10 for hours in some of these things.
Of course.
Good structure. We had 90-minute levels. So I think very important this play, especially from like 12, 13 players down to 9, because when you get to the final table, these short stacks are kind of handcuffed. Where you got to have hands to move in. We've got 100K pay jumps. There's ICM pressure. Where once you get to the final table, the strategies are more or less, I don't want to say they're set, but things are more controlled. Where with short-handed play with 2 tables left is where a lot of the magic happens.
Right. So are you 3-betting a lot? Are you calling a lot? Like, so are you 3-betting the middle stacks? Are you 3-betting the big, like where are you targeting? And then also, when are you flatting? A lot of people say like, oh, you got to raise every time. You got to 3-bet. I don't know. Sometimes there is value in flatting in a scenario, so the pot A doesn't bloat so much, or that you can actually play with a player and maybe outplay them, especially in position. Like, so, again, everything is specific, but kind of goes through your thought process. Really, what I'd like to do, like we've done with so many players, we had this very same conversation with Brian Yun, who is a multiple WSOP bracelet winner, who has battled through these massive fields, and he said the same thing. He said when it gets down to those players, there are, and he made a very interesting point. He said it's not just the amateurs, by the way. Sometimes it's the pros that are more scared than the amateurs, because the amateurs have nothing to lose. They don't really care. Whereas the pros, they realize this could be their only shot. And I will tell you, in clear openness and honesty, when he said that, I went, I literally was like, yep. Like literally, like, you want to put the target right there. That's right. That's exactly right. I've gone down to final 12, 14, 11 at WPTs. And what he just said, that's exactly the way I felt. I'm like, oh God, I might not make it back. And, now 5-6 years later, would I play it differently? I probably would. So that's kind of what I want to kind of get your thought process so people can hear it, because there are going to be a lot of people that dream to be in this position. And hopefully of the tens of thousands of listeners that we have, somebody will be.
Yeah. It's obviously it's all specific. And I have my baseline strategy of hands I'm going to 3-bet, hands I'm going to open like that. But it is a lot of, I want to take the path of least resistance. So if people are over folding, we would say, if they're folding hands they shouldn't to when I open, I'm going to open a lot. Because if you get a player, you're talking about these like scared pros or these tighter players looking for pay jumps. If they're opening, you can't really 3-bet a guy who's opening 10s plus ace king. You're just walking right into it. So there's really not a lot of money in 3-betting a tight open. But if you get guys who also have a lot of chips and are kind of doing what you're doing, opening wide, those are the guys to go after. And then and it feels like this, I am looking to avoid huge pre-flop all-in scenarios. So, for example, in this tournament, I ended up losing kind of a big pot where with 2 tables left, I'm in first. I open the button with ace king. Small blind calls. The big blind is the player in second place, still in second place. He puts on a huge squeeze. And I've got 20 million. He's got 18 million. Second's got like 10 million. I'm probably a spot where he's bluffing a lot. Could put in a 4-bet, could shove theoretically, but I took the path of least variance and just called. End up losing kind of a big pot to 10-4 offsuit, which he squeezed with. But my point there is, if I were to 4-bet and he goes all in, we end up all in, and he's got 2 jacks, I do not want to be flipping.
You're sick.
First and second in that spot. I would rather just take the path of least resistance and continue to play smaller pots and play post flop.
Whereas if you had you're a middling stack, like
I
that
would
is
be
an
willing to
easy
go.
choice. So here we go. Let's go. Let's
Yeah.
just hand it off. Right.
I don't need to be flipping for 40 million with
Right.
100 million in play with 12 players left.
Right. Whereas if you still had 15 million, you're still in great shape and you're in
That's
phenomenal spots. Right. But then also with regards to flatting, right? Obviously in positions or whatever it is, do you like, so somebody who's a really tight player, like you just said, right? So the range is probably tens and better, ace, queen and better, right? Like that's the range is this big. And you look down at 9-8 suited.
Yeah.
And you're on the button. 6-7 handed.
That comes down to stack depth, where if the guy's got 15, 20 blinds, which they usually do, those types of players, you can't really profitably flat.
Right.
Try to hit a straighter flush. But if one of these tighter players has a lot of chips, I love to flat if they're deeper, because they're going to kind of tell you pretty quickly on the flop and turn what they have.
Right.
And most of them, I mean, this is not a knock on these guys, but are utterly incapable of running some kind of like multi-street bluff.
Right.
With
Insane
2 tables left in this tournament where they're going to unload. And that makes the fact that they're playing honestly with their cards kind of makes it easier to play against them.
Sure. And I think that's where I think a lot of players, you just hear all of these strategies from all these different players, from Daniel to Jonathan Little and everyone saying all that. I'm not saying that they're wrong. That's not my point. It's just more of there's so much information coming at them, coming at all these people, is that I hear so many people being like, I just can't 3-bet with 9-8 suited there. And I tell a lot of people, like, why do you have to 3-bet? They go, because that's what I'm told. Like, I have to 3-bet or fold. I go, you can call in position. You can see a flop. Let's see what happens, right? I mean, and something scary could happen, right? I mean, like, your obviously great scenario is that flops with an 8 and it completely misses their ace king, or the reverse is it flops 9-8 2 and he does have aces, right? I mean, like, so great.
And there's also a almost philosophical or psychological advantage where if you think you're a better player than these guys you're playing against, the more decision points you put them to, the more flop, turn, river decisions they have to make, the more likely they'll make a mistake and you'll make the better decision. So you're kind of compounding their inexperience if they are not doing the right thing. It's not just they shoved their jacks in pre-flop. They have to now make a flop bet. They have to decide on the turn. Making weaker players make more decisions is usually good.
Right. And that's why back when Moneymaker started this boom, back in the 2003 to 2006 era, maybe 7 era, it was really a pre-flop game, right? People just wanted to get it all. And people were getting 60 big blinds in and didn't even think twice about it. Like, I got jacks, you raise, I re-raise, I'm all in. Like, they don't even think about it, right? And so now that's where the game changed right around, in my opinion, like 2008 to 2010 was like, I have ace 5, I'm going to 6-bet you and min bet you, click and all this kind of stuff, that crap.
Those are the days, right? I used to, what do you do with this hand? I usually 4 to 6.
Yeah. Exactly. Like when I 5-bet you, what do you do? Oh, I have an ace blocker, so I'm going to 6-bet you. I go, okay, well, when I flip over aces, what do you do? I go, I throw up. I go, I'm out. And the best is, how could you have that hand? I had the ace blocker. I go, there are 4 aces, right? I don't really get it. But it's really the scenario where people were flatting more on the flop to see it. And it became a post-flop game. And I think that's where, in all honesty, for me, 10 years ago, that I feel like I'm a really good pre-flop player, but post-flop, when the game really transitioned to a lot of post-flop play, I struggled initially. And then I actually played a lot of limit. It seems kind of funny, but I actually played a lot of limit hold'em. And it is different, don't get me wrong. But you really can see after the flop, no one's folding. So you really have to judge what they have. It really helped me. It really helped my game. And now I'm so comfortable post flop. Like, I want to see a flop. I don't want to get it all in, kind of thing. And so I think it's very interesting when you come down to that stage. And I think that for people who are listening, I would really ask you to listen to it again, maybe even listen to Brian Yun's interview as well, but really taking advantage of players' tendencies. And I think your comment, Darren, was really apropos. Putting them to more decisions gives them the opportunity to just make more mistakes.
Yep. And the skill edge is going to be greater post flop. You're going to get it in sometimes, and these guys are dead. Where that doesn't really happen pre-flop. And
of course,
don't be afraid to flat call. Don't be afraid to just call opens and take it post flop, especially if you're confident in your post flop play.
Right. And I've said to other people too, don't be afraid to flat. You bet you have a really good hand, whether you hit 2 pair or over pair or set or whatever, and they 3-bet you, or they raise you there. Don't be afraid of, like, at least for me, I look at it as like, don't be afraid of the flush and be like, oh, I got to get them off the flush. Because first of all, they probably aren't going to fold the nut flush there anyway. So you're not getting them off of anything. I always say that to them when I reverse it. I go, if you had the nut flush there, would you fold? No. So why do you think they're going to fold? Yeah, like, I don't get this. They're not folding. So let's see it. And by the way, when the third flush card hits, that doesn't mean they have the flush. You're just looking at the monsters under the bed saying, like, they must have the flush. They don't necessarily have the flush either. So it is very interesting to calm and slow people down, because I think the players who are at that stage and haven't experienced it, they just want the hand over and just to be like going like this, so that they're like, oh, I'm still in the tournament kind of thing, So, well, first of all, obviously, good luck on May 25th. Hopefully you take your 5th one down. But I have to ask, and I know this is a horrible, bad question to ask, because no one likes being asked this question, especially in your shoes. I don't want to say there's very few people on this list, but this list is there, and you hate being on it, but it's just unfortunate, is that how is it being on that list for best players without a WSOP bracelet? And what do you feel like? First of all, there aren't that many events, right? Et cetera, et cetera. But you've played, obviously, you haven't played 1,000 WPT main events, and you've had great success there. Is there a difference in the WSOP player pool compared to the WPT main events? You played in a 2010 player field, so it's not like you're not playing in fields that are massive. We're not talking you've only won events with 400 players. So, but I will preface it by that WSOP bracelet events, especially no limits, are usually 15 and lower, where there are going to be 2,000-3,000. So is this a scenario that you feel like if you're going to win a bracelet, it would be in a no limit, or will it be in a mixed game like our favorite deuce to 7 no limit, which, to be brutally honest, I've said for the last 5-6 years, if I'm going to win a bracelet, it's going to be in that event. That's why by the way, you'll never see me miss it. You'll know, because that's what in my opinion, the two decent shots I have at winning a bracelet. Because I'm not that guy that wins a 2,000, 3,000 person event. I'm just not that guy. So
I would say, I think that most of the discrepancy, I guess, in results would be luck oriented, where I've been in World Series events, chip lead, 2 tables left,
of course,
lose a huge flip, I'm out. I've been in WPT events, 2 tables left, get kings in versus aces, hit a king, win the tournament. So that stuff has happened, and that's real. Also, I probably haven't executed as well in the bigger World Series events. That's probably part of it too. I've played the 100Ks, the 50Ks. I've had good stacks in some of these high roller events, and hasn't panned out. But I would say, I would agree with you that the deuce to 7, the 10K deuce to 7, I've gotten third in twice. Usually gets a field around 80 players.
Right.
There's 2 close calls there where I could have played better in both of those deuce to 7 events. So I think that's probably my best shot. And one thing I will say is the structure of the World Series, where it's this 2-month marathon, is not favorable to me. I usually, nowadays with the kids, I make 3 trips, 2 or 3 trips. I'm there for a week. I'm home for a week. I'm there for a week.
Same with me. Yeah. I
can't really be in Las Vegas for 2 months and stay sane or happy or play well. So I really have to break it up and kind of pick and choose, circle some events that I really want to play, and then focus on those.
Right. It's tough it's 2 things. It's tough to get into a rhythm, but then on top of it, like you said, like when you play these WPT main events, like typically you might come in for the high roller or a bigger event day prior, and then go right into the main, and you're focused on that the whole time. Whereas a WSOP,
it's 2 or 3
WSOP,
events,
it's like, okay, here's the next one, here's the next one, here's the next one, and it's just so hectic and chaotic. And also, I will tell you, at least from my experience over the last, what is it now, 17, 18 years, is that you don't get off to a good start, it just becomes and like, you could blank on 4 or 5 tournaments in a row, and do that at a circuit event. You could do that in 4 or 5 WPT main events and like not even think twice about it. But when you feel like you did 4 or 5 tournaments and maybe in a rebuy in one of them, 2 of them, now there's 6 buy-ins and it's all over like 5 or 6 days. I just feel sick. And now all of a sudden you're like,
they're busting a World Series event. They're going over the Venetian, going over the Wynn. They're busting 3 different venues in a day. Like crazy. That's not for me. And I'm hoping I do well at this final table May 25th, and then kind of carry some momentum into the series. And I am happy to have a new venue. Happy to be out of the Rio just because bad memories there, and maybe start new arena. So I'm hoping that's going to work out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Darren, obviously we've known each other for a long time. We've played a lot. We played a lot of Deuce to 7 too, actually. So it's been always fun. Let me win mine first. Then you can have as many as you want. Is that cool? Does that work? Okay,
you take the 1,500.
I'll take whatever one you want, bro.
Okay.
I'm okay with it. I'm good with it. So Darren Elias here, good friend of the show, and good luck on May 25th. Hopefully you take down your 5th title, as you are obviously leading the way, and look forward to catching up with you and seeing you at the World Series, my friend.
Thanks, Bernard. Happy to be here.
Darren Elias here, 4-time WPT champion, over $9 million in career earnings. Great to have him back on the show. Stay tuned. The World Series is right around the corner, but not only that, it is going to be the 15th anniversary of the Bernard Lee Poker Show. We'll look back at a lot of memories. We have some great interviews coming up with some WSOP main event champions celebrating their anniversaries as well. So, as always, may you always go in with the best hand, and may you never get unlucky. Good night, everybody. Also, if you are here on YouTube, I hope you've enjoyed this great interviews with Darren, and we'll have some other great interviews coming up, and go back into the archives. We've had some phenomenal ones over the last year or so. Please like and subscribe, helps the channel out, and we'll see you as we start celebrating our 15th anniversary here on the Bernard Lee Poker Show.